Yeah, no, it is. Reminder to download, rate, and subscribe to the podcast, 415ers podcast, as always, Odyssey Sports Podcast Network, Evan Giddings and Marc Randy. You know, there is blame to go around in all three phases. So you mentioned it off the top. I know that the defense, and maybe this is why I just felt, you know, I felt like the defense was leaking holes. I mean, it was a sinking ship yesterday because they'd been so good. I felt like large in part, even though the offense only mustered 23 points, to me, I wasn't necessarily surprised that they were around that region. I mean, when we talked about our predictions for the game on Friday, at least before Christian McCaffrey became a 49er, and we'll certainly get to him and his impact on the game. Um, I thought in order for the 49ers to win, it would have to be, a 24-20 game, a 27-24 game. And I thought that they would be able to win this game in that fashion. But for a second straight week, the defense did not show up, allowed leaks on third down, allowed Kansas City to pick up chunk plays. Atlanta did it via the paper cut. Like it was just 1,000 cuts and they killed the 49ers that way. This time it was absolutely big gashes by the Chiefs. And to allow 30 points in the second half, 9.1 yards per play again, like the Chiefs just got whatever they wanted. And so that's why, especially when you add on those penalties, a couple of offsides here and there, you just can't even, on a day where the offense is humming for Kansas City, you cannot give them anything else in that fashion. And look, I don't know if there are many teams that are going to beat the Chiefs when they're rolling like they did yesterday. But if you're going to even, think about coming from behind against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, you got to play mistake-free football. And once again, the 49ers lost the turnover battle, albeit slim, but three extra possessions for a Kansas City offense, you're going to be looking at a lot of 40-point outputs.
Yeah, I mean, and look, one of the interceptions was Brock Purdy at the end of the game. Like, you can throw that one out. That's not a big deal. But the one interception by Jimmy Garoppolo, he also fumbled the ball. The game was really over at that point as well. It was that first turnover that was really the big one, not only because it gave Kansas City a possession, but it took likely a touchdown off the board for you. That was a huge swing. We've already talked about it. Overall, I mean, I don't know how you feel. I mean, the offense, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see they put up 444 total yards of offense. They averaged over 6 yards per play. Jimmy Garoppolo, you look at his numbers. I mean, he threw the ball 37 times again. That's a lot. 25 for 37, 303 yards, 2 touchdowns, that one interception. It was a really bad interception. One of his worst throws, not his worst moment, I would say, but probably his worst throw, singular throw of the season. It's the first time he's thrown for 300 yards in a game this year, if I'm not mistaken. The offense, it wasn't bad. They moved the ball well. They stalled out once they got, on the Kansas City side of the field. Those are issues. But I think all in all, I think the offense was fine. I thought Jimmy Garoppolo played pretty decently. Again, he has to be better. He can't make that throw in the end zone that turned into the interception, and they have to be able to finish drives. You're not going to beat Kansas City by settling for field goals, but they moved the ball well. I'm not sure that the offense largely was the problem. I mean, they scored 23 points, but the number of yards that they put up, they were getting good chunks on the ground. I mean, George Kittle had 98 yards, Ayuk 82. Ray McCloud had some garbage time catches. He was up to 65 yards. He and Brock Purdy seemed to have a nice connection, oddly enough. Um, I'm not sure that the offense was that big of an issue. Now, of course, as I mentioned, you need to score touchdowns and not settle for field goals, but this team was still moving the ball pretty well. I mean, they didn't have many 3-and-outs. They got on the plus side of the 50 more often than not. They just couldn't finish off drives. But all in all, they were able to move the ball pretty well against this Kansas City team. It was just on the other side, Kansas City was getting into the end zone every time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, 21 carries for the 49ers, about 100 yards on the ground,
Yeah.
close to, 5 yards a pop. Like, that's obviously not the volume that Kyle Shanahan would want, but when you're playing from behind most of the game, I think that's kind of as good as you could ask for, as far as running the ball, throwing the ball through the air. That is the reason. I know we harped on the interception and deservedly so, but I do think that it mars the rest of the game for Garoppolo because look, I thought the initial touchdown pass to Ray McCloud, the 8-yard kind of I don't know what they call it, like a heave. It was it was sort of like a shot put from the pocket as he was rolling out to
Yeah.
his right early in the game, but I thought it was a pretty good play. And look, he allowed his guy to Jimmy Garoppolo, I think this year has shown more faith in his receivers maybe than any other year as quarterback for the 49ers. He's willing to put balls in places that are advantageous to his guys. And maybe that's what got him in trouble on the interception on the goal line. He just kind of threw it up and said, "Hey, Kittle, go make a play," which he did later in the game on a 3rd down and 10 over the middle. I mean, he put a ball in a spot in the end zone that George Kittle could go get it. I know some
Yeah.
people were saying on after the play that, the throw was a little bit late. Nonetheless, it was a good ball by Garoppolo. I thought the touchdown pass to McLeod was a good pass. He made some good plays over the game. But of course, when you make the back-breaking play, I know the fumble, like you mentioned, the game was all but over. But Jimmy Garoppolo, I thought was look, that's about as good of a Jimmy G game as you're going to get, minus the interception at the goal line, and that's unfortunately something that comes with Garoppolo. So offensively, I thought Kittle was fine today. I know Ayuk had an early drop on the first drive that
Mm.
ended up resulting in a field goal. Maybe that's a play that he would want back, but 11 targets for him. Debo made a couple of nice plays in traffic. He also had a drop over the middle on a ball that maybe was a little bit behind him in the second half. Offensively, it was kind of much of the same for me, at least from what I've seen from the 49ers this year. And so I don't necessarily think this game is on them. Maybe you could say that, Shanahan could have been a little bit better as far as, reacting to what Kansas City was throwing at them defensively. But once Kansas City draws even or even gets the lead, this is a defensive line that can apply pressure. And that's what we saw, especially in the pass rush. I know you mentioned Chris Jones on Friday was someone that was going to be
He
a
was great.
load to deal with, and he was fantastic for Kansas City.
Yeah, he really was. And we're talking here about the offense. I mean, obviously the defense was the issue more so than anything else. You give up 44 points, you give up 529 total yards of offense in Patrick Mahomes' 8 drives. He didn't play in garbage time. They brought Chad Henne in. In those 8 drives, the Niners allowed 10.7 yards per play, 6 touchdowns, 1 field goal attempt, and 1 interception in those 8 drives. So not good. But the reality here is this 49ers offense, as it stands right now, even with all of the weapons, Christian McCaffrey, Debo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, even with all those guys, a Jimmy Garoppolo-led offense is not going to win you a game like this. If the opponent is getting into the 40s, the Niners simply will not win. With Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, the Niners have scored 40 or more points 5 times in 55 games. That includes the playoffs. 5 times in 55 games, they've scored 40 or more. That includes the game against Jacksonville in 2017, which was Jimmy Garoppolo's 4th start as a Niner. They did it 3 times in 2019 against Cincinnati, against Carolina, and then, of course, that wild win against New Orleans. That was the only time the Niners have made sure that they gave up 40 or more points and they still managed to win that game. The only other time was week 1 last year in Detroit. So the Niners have done it 1 time since the end of the 2019 season. Their offense, led by Jimmy Garoppolo, has scored 40 or more points. Simply put, if your defense is having a bad game, an off game like they did on Sunday against the Chiefs, Niners will not win. It's just not how it happens. This offense, led by Jimmy Garoppolo, is incapable of putting up numbers to keep up with the elite offenses in this league. So that just puts all that much more pressure on the defense to keep it close, to keep an opponent to 20, 30 points max to give this Niners team a chance to win. And I mean, clearly, I'm not saying the blame is on the Niners offense. I'm just saying the way that this offense works, you have a close to zero chance to win a game like this. When the opponent is clicking on all cylinders, you're not going to be able to keep up. It's just the reality of this 49ers offense. So the Niners defense is going to have to lead the way all season long, despite the fact that the Niners, as we talked about last week, when the Christian McCaffrey trade went through, probably have the best skill position group in the NFL, the best offensive weapons in the NFL. But led by this quarterback, they're just simply not built to keep up with some of the highest powered offenses in the league.
Yeah, and look, only one other team scored 40 or more points this week. It was the Arizona Cardinals on Thursday night, and they had the help of 2 pick sixes.
Yeah.
So it is going to be very difficult for any team to play in the 40s with the Chiefs. Nonetheless, a 49ers team that, as you mentioned, is not built to put up prolific numbers, especially on the scoreboard. I do want to quickly get your thoughts on Christian McCaffrey, because to me, and if there was going to be a positive, especially offensively, I think we got a glimpse of what could be with McCaffrey. I know that he wasn't out there as much in the second half as opposed to the first, but when he was on the field and when they were able to, get him the ball in a variety of ways, and it was all pretty simplistic. It was, a toss, a couple runs, a little dump off, nothing super creative, at least for my eyes, Mark. I felt like, that is something that could be a game changer for the 49ers moving forward, and could be a guy that is your third down option out of the backfield, like we saw multiple times from Kansas City being able to use their running backs to keep the 49ers defense off balance. Christian McCaffrey showed glimpses when he was on the field, and again, having no practice, essentially no time to learn the playbook, has already at least shown to me that it could be something special when it comes to C-Mac coming out of the backfield.
Oh, I thought McCaffrey was absolutely phenomenal. 8 carries, 38 yards. That's just under 5 a pop. He had a couple of catches for 24 yards as well. In total, 10 touches, 62 yards. That's over 6 yards per touch. And 6 of his 10 touches went for 5 or more yards. And I'm not sure those numbers really do it justice. He had some chunk plays. I mean, he had a 10-yard run, a 9-yard run, 13-yard catch, 12-yard run. Those were his first 4 touches. He wasn't as effective after those first 4 touches, but still, I mean, you look at every one of his touches, he always got more yards than what were blocked for him. He always made 2, 3 Chiefs miss and gained a few extra yards than you thought possible. He was incredible. And I think, the biggest positive for the 49ers, if you're trying to take away something, it's how effective he was in this game, despite, as you mentioned, having 0 practice time. Knowing, what Kyle Shanahan said after the game, maybe 20 plays of the playbook. He was incredible. And there were times where Jimmy Garoppolo kind of had to direct him in the huddle, explain to him what the play was, tell him where to line up. I think there was one moment where you could hear him after they broke the huddle and they started to line up. He, said, "Hey, Christian, line up there, like stand there." Considering all of that, I thought he was incredible. He was everything the Niners could have hoped he could possibly be in this game. And, as games go on and he gets a full practice week to lead up against the Rams, then he gets a bye week. We're going to see, obviously, his usage get up, and he'll be certainly more effective, and he'll probably get in the end zone a couple of times in the game coming up. But considering all the circumstances, I thought McCaffrey was absolutely incredible in this game. Just unfortunately could not play enough because of the circumstances to have a bigger impact.